Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar. Today we are really happy at the YSI Graduate Economic History Seminar to organize jointly a session with the Quantitative History webinar convened by Professor Zhihao Chen and Chin-Chen Ma from the University of Hong Kong. Today we are really happy to have Zhihao Chu from UCLA presenting his PhD work. Today's session will be chaired by Professor Debin Ma from Itosubashi University. Thank you very much, Professor Ma, for being with us today. So the format will be as following. Zhihao will have 30 to 35 minutes to present his work, and then Professor Ma will provide his comments on the work for about 5 minutes, and then I will open the Q&A part of the session. So please, during all the talk of Zhihao and Professor Ma comments, write your question in the Q&A box. The Q&A box is at the bottom of your screen, and I would then read your question to Zhihao after the Bilma comments. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise them in the Q&A and we'll answer you. And now I turn to Professor Ma for the few comments on the series.
Thanks, Amelis. And it's really a great honor to be invited to chair the session. And this is, I guess, the first of this joint series with this very long group you graduate students have organized. One of the great things about students in Europe, probably North America, is the self-organization, right? So it's really, really wonderful. I think, you know, Zhu and his group in Hong Kong are the really driving force behind this. And I don't think I want to say a lot more on that. But hopefully, maybe by the end of the talk, Zhu could come back and say something about the quantitative history webinar. But all I try to say here is it's been extremely successful webinar. I myself have participated at least twice in giving presentations. And today, you know, this for a graduate seminar, we have 83 participants already. So this is really, really wonderful opportunity. But anyway, in any case, this is also really wonderful that we have graduate student seminar. That quantitative history is involved, mostly topics in Asia, but also around the world as well. So without further ado, let me give the time to Zhihao, who is speaking from very late at Los Angeles, who will be talking to this extremely interesting topic. And that's part of the reason I got very interested in it as well. So I'm learning a lot from it. And it's called Price Convergence through a Financial Network. So would you like to get started and share your slides? And you have 30, 40 minutes. Go ahead, take it over now. Oh,
okay,
thank you. Yeah, let me just say one thing before I forgot. We will, if you do have questions, I think Melly's already said, do feel free to write them on. I will give some comments. My comments are not really very long, but particularly my comments are in the form of questions. I would like to leave as much time to the audience as possible for raising questions. So please do join in when it's finished or even in between. We will be watching for your questions and so on. Sorry, Zhihao, go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Ma. So can you see my slides move?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank YSI, EHS, and QH Doctoral Research Webinar for having me here. I'm Zhihao Xu from UCLA Department of Economics. I'm going to present my research, price convergence through a financial network. Does financial integration impact price integration in real sectors? So as the title states, the research question is just, does financial integration, domestic financial integration, impact commodity price integration? So why we carry this research? According to the literature, a high level of goods market integration will lead to long-run development benefits. So if the answer to the research question is yes, then the logical chain will be complete. So there's a high level of financial integration leads to a high level of goods market integration, finally results to long-run development benefits. So this research especially matters for developing countries with poor financial system due to war or weak infrastructure. So in my research, the domestic financial integration is measured by capital flow cost, approximated by an important term in my research called domestic exchange rate. I also measure price integration by cross-regional commodity relative price, or its convergence rate across different cities. So about the past literature. More literature focuses on the effect of international financial integration on real output. Little is known about the impact of domestic financial integration. So until recently, more research has been found on the effect of domestic integration, financial integration on real output or real economy, and shows the potential large effects due to the banking deregulation in modern United States in the 1970s to 1990s. So it shows that the high level of domestic financial integration will expand interstate trade and increase house price and output correlations. However, little is known about the past of today's developed economies. And what's more, the studies on today's developing countries is more limited due to the lack of data. So I'm going to investigate a case of developing countries by adopting the setting of the Chinese Civil War from 1945 to 1949. So during that time, China was an underdeveloped economy with countless battles. I'm using the domestic exchange market, which enabled money transfers across regions. The exchange bills will reflect the cost and risk of shipping money. And I use battle risk to a financial hub for multilateral clearance as an instrument for capital flow costs or domestic exchange rates. The battles in the Civil War will affect the capital flows between two cities connected to the financial hub, but it will not directly affect goods transportation between city pairs. Therefore, by this identification strategy, I'm able to distinguish the effect of financial integration from that of trade integration or commodity price convergence. So the main mechanism here is that a lower level of capital flow costs due to a declining domestic exchange rate will facilitate trade or balance money demand or supply across regions, thereby promoting the price convergence across cities. So let me show you the brief preview of the main results of my paper. First, city pairs with direct domestic exchange link show faster commodity price convergence than others. And second, financial disintegration in a domestic exchange network due to battles in the Civil War will raise capital flow costs, thereby decelerate commodity price convergence by 4% to 8%. And finally, a weak form of purchase power parity PPP holds in a domestic scenario. On average, I found that 1% depreciation in domestic exchange rates was associated with 0.2 to 0.3 percentage points reduction in inflation rate differentials. So my research has the following contributions to the literature. So it shows the network effect in the domestic exchange, domestic financial integration impact on economic activity co-movement. And it complements the PPP theory with the domestic scenario and provides the quantitative analysis of efficiency of the pre-central banking payment system. And finally, similar to the literatures made by the Chinese scholars, my research found that China's financial system was more sophisticated than expected in the early 20th centuries. So that will lead to a great contrast between China's financial development and its real economy falling behind. So that will motivate us to rethink what was the main driving force behind the China West divergence. That was a long-lasting research topic in econ history. So this is the outline. I just finished the introduction, and I move on to background. So the first element of the background is related to the domestic exchange market. So the domestic exchange market was the historical decentralized clearing system, which played an important role in the United States in the 19th centuries and in China in the early 20th centuries. So this market enabled interregional money transfers. And at that time, money still needs to be shipped across different cities when the money transfer occurred. So what is the domestic exchange rate? The rate was quoted for every 1,000 yuan money transfer, or in the United States, every $1,000. So it could be quoted at parity, premium, or discount. So for example, a rate of 1,000.25 yuan or a premium of 25 cents on import in Shanghai means in order to transfer 1,000 yuan to Shanghai, you need to pay 1,000 yuan and 25 cents in import. So the premium of 25 cents actually reflect the capital flow cost or money transfer cost. So according to literature, the domestic exchange rate was bounded by money shipping or capital flow costs, and the fluctuation in domestic exchange rates will reflect the relative money demand or supply across different cities. So then let me show you two big pictures of the contemporary situation. The first one is related to the Chinese domestic exchange network during the Civil War period. So as we can see from the picture, there are many cities in the domestic exchange network. Let me show you here that any black edge connected two cities means a direct domestic exchange transaction could take place between each other. So for example, Lanzhou can transfer money to Chongqing directly. However, Chengdu cannot transfer money directly to Lanzhou. Instead, they need to went through another financial hub, for example, Chongqing or maybe Shanghai. So I need to mention here, in my paper, a financial hub was widely defined. That means not only Shanghai, Peiping, and Chongqing, the metropolis, are financial hub. Any cities that connected to at least two other cities will be called a financial hub. But we can see from this picture, Shanghai, Peiping, Tianjin, Chongqing, and Hankou are the most important financial hub because they connect to many cities. The next picture shows you the basic situation of the Chinese Civil War from 1945 September to 1949 April. The size of the cycle represents the size of battles, which indicating the number of soldiers involved in each battles. And opacities of the circle means the durations. So we see the many geography variations in the Civil War, which is helpful for my following estimation. So let me show you an illustration for identification strategy. Suppose initially we have two cities, A and B, and now we turn to the bilateral domestic exchanges. So suppose the unit currency shipping cost is 50 cents for every 1,000 yuan transfer. And red color arrow means capital flows, and black arrow means trade flows. So for example, A imports bananas from B was 1,000 yuan. So A needs to transfer 1,000 yuan to B, right? And B, on the other hand, import apples in unit of 2,000 yuan from A and transfer 2,000 yuan to A. So the trade flows is 1,000 plus 2,000 is 3,000 yuan, right? AB, that is the sum of these two trade flows. However, AB capital flows, due to the bilateral domestic exchange clearance, was reduced to 1,000 yuan because there's a settlement or clearance between these two. You only need to transfer 1,000 yuan from one place to another. So the domestic exchange rate in B on A will between 25 cents and 50 cents. This is a premium. And on the other hand, there's a discount from negative 50 cents to 25 cents. Now let me add another setting. I call it financial hub C. So what is different here is that now I add two more trade flows and capital flows. So AB trade flows stay the same, that is 3,000 yuan. However, CB capital flows settlement will be 600 yuan and AC will be 500 yuan. These two capital flows will reduce the AB capital flows settlements to around 0. Okay, so the main takeaway here is that by adding more financial hubs into the domestic exchange network, it is more likely the capital flow cost between AB, the initial city pair will be reduced to a very low level. So here, domestic exchange rate between AB will be very close to the parity. Now, what will happen if I add the battle shocks targeting C? The battle shocks will only block the interaction between AC and CB, but the assumption here is that battle shocks to C did not directly affect AB goods transportation. Okay, so AB goods transportation, I mean, the trade flows will stay the same, 3,000 yuan, but AB capital flow settlements now resume to its initial value, which we showed in the first picture, which is 1,000 yuan. Okay, now domestic exchange rate in B on A and or in A on B resume to the initial level. So main takeaway here is that battle shocks that targeting the financial hub will increase the capital flow cost between the city pair connected to financial hub by blocking the multilateral domestic exchange clearance. Okay, now let me show you the data description and the data collection procedure. So with the help of 19 undergrad students, I collected and digitalized all the data from archives. The data set includes a city pair-wise domestic exchange rates and cross-city commodity prices from 1945 December to 1949 April. All the data on daily basis covering 20 cities. The main source are the Financial Weekly and the Credit News. And I also document the detailed information of 104 major battles. So this is the way I collect the data. I use the microfilm projector, which is a very old machine, not used today. So the data or the sheets or stored in the frame. I use the projector to get the data frame by frame. So let me show you a big picture of the relationship between the relative price and the capital flow cost. The capital flow cost was measured by the absolute premium percentage in domestic exchange rate, which is shown on the vertical axis, and the horizontal axis is the commodity relative price. So it is apparently that we can see that when the capital flow cost is higher, the relative price is also higher. I mean, the price gap between cities is also higher. So that means a lower level financial integration will lead to a lower level, was associated with a lower level of a market integration. So now let me turn to the research design section. I use the price convergence equation to examine which factor will affect the price convergence across cities. So PCD here is the price differentials between a city pair, I and J, and delta PCT is the difference of price differentials in time. Okay, and the first term on the right-hand side is the automatic convergence trend, and the third term, the interaction terms of the factor of the factor of the shifters and the price differentials is the shift in the convergent trend. So if the price differential is the convergent trend, a convergent sequence, then beta will be between -1 and 0. So that means it is convergence in time. And it is similar that the coefficient for the factors that are affecting the price convergence will also be the relationship like this. So that means if gamma I is positive, then that means the factor xci will decelerate convergence. If gamma I is less than 0, they will accelerate convergence. Okay, so now let me show you what is the effect of domestic exchange rates. So I just replace the xct, the factors that will affect the price convergence, by the domestic exchange rates in interaction terms. So here, the capital flow cost was measured by the absolute premium percentage in domestic exchange rates. For example, 25 cents premium means 0.225%, and 1 cent discount means 0.15%. Okay, I use this to as the normalization purpose. So I also control the distance in the interjection terms. So the hypothesis here is that if a capital flow cost, a higher level of capital flow cost will decelerate the commodity price convergence between cities, then gamma I, the gamma 1 will be positive. Otherwise, it will be negative. So let me just show you the most important results. So results shown in the red rectangle indicates that a significant positive sign in coefficient means that a higher level of in domestic exchange rate absolute premium percentage of capital flow cost will decelerate the commodity price convergence between cities. Okay, and the similar results controls for the distance. That means if the two cities is far away from each other, then their price convergence in commodity will slow down. That is meet our intuition expectation. Okay, so let me review the identification strategy. Okay, very quickly. So I use the battle measures and instrument variable for the domestic exchange rates. A hub in the financial network is not necessarily a hub on the transportation routes. And I mainly focused on the influence on battles on financial hub, not the influence of battles directly on the city pair. And the battle risk will raise the cost of money flows, so decelerate the price convergence. So let me emphasize the assumption. Battle risk to a financial hub did not affect the goods transportation within city pair connect to the hub. But in my robustness test, I also provide the exclusion, which controls the direct influence of battles on the city pair. Okay, so this is the way I construct the instrument variable. For any city pair, Cij, I find all the financial hub connecting them. Okay, and for any financial hub, I calculate the battle influence from all ongoing battles, which is a weighted average of causality and distance from the battle location to the financial hub. So here, the indirect war risk to the city pair is through all financial hub. So be careful here. It's the battle influence for all financial hub, not directly to the city pair. Okay, so here that is just a sum of the battle influence on all financial hubs to the connecting to the city pair. So the IV result basically confirms the adverse effect of the capital flow cost. That means a higher capital flow cost will decelerate the price convergence. So let me summarize the main results. The takeaway here is that I use the absolute premium discount percentage in domestic exchange rates as a measure of capital flow cost. A positive sign on the interaction term means a higher capital flow cost will decelerate the cross-city price convergence. So by calculation, a 1% increase in premium will lead to at least 0.5% in convergence rate. And disruptions in the financial network due to the battles in the Civil War will decelerate convergence rate across cities by 4% to 8%. And the IV results confirms the OIS results. The final section is related to the purchasing power parity, which is a domestic scenario. So actually, this is another way to look at what is the relationship between the financial integration and market integration. So I test a weak form of a PPP, which is the proportional relationship between the inflation rate differentials and the percentage change in domestic exchange rate. The hypothesis here is that PPP holds. So that means if PPP holds, we will say theta 1 or theta 2 be significantly positive. Okay, so in order to test in order to estimate this equation, I show you how I construct the inflation rate, because the inflation rates across cities were not accessible from the data sets. So I used the method, the weighted average method adopted by the Central Bank of Republic of China to construct the panel. So this is a table, the weight table covering 23 commodities used by the central bank. However, I only get access to data of 5 commodities. The reason why I only get 5 commodities because I need to keep the data panel balanced. And for most of the cities, we can only get the 5 commodities data. However, I will argue that when you can see from the table, the weight of these 5 commodities adds up around two-thirds of the total weight. So they are very good representation of the general price pattern. So the main results will be shown in the rectangle marked in the red. So that is a very strong and positive effect association between the percentage change in domestic exchange rates and inflation rate differentials. So the takeaway here is that 1% depreciation in domestic exchange rate was associated around 0.3 to 0.2 percentage point reduction in inflation rate differential. So that means when the domestic exchange rate declines, the capital flow cost decline, then 2 cities will show more similar price patterns over time. So to summarize, I show that the financial integration does impact the real integration, and the Chinese domestic exchange market provided a meaningful channel for cross-city price convergence. In details, weak connection in the domestic exchange network will indicate a slower price convergence. And a weak form of purchasing power parity holds between the domestic exchange rates and the inflation rates gap. So recall that from the beginning, now I show that there is a great contrast between China's financial advance and its real economy falling behind from the westward. So the future work for this research is to conduct a welfare analysis of relative price dispersions across regions. So much for my presentation, and thank you for attending for my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zhihao, for this very very interesting talk. So I now turn to Professor Debinement for his comments.
Okay. Wow, this is a very quick and short, precise presentation. So I have, as I said, I want to emphasize that I'm going to give a relatively brief comments. I would like to encourage people to ask more questions. In some sense, a very stimulating paper. Everybody can see me share the screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And you can hear me okay. Okay. In some sense, when I first saw the title, let me go to the summary very quickly. Oh, it's moving. Okay. For a long time, I think not many economists take Chinese economic history very seriously, certainly financial history very seriously. And so in that sense that this is a very serious study looking at the case of China in that period, 1945, 1949. And I should emphasize this is really a very unusual period. This study in some sense is extremely well motivated. And of course, in some sense, you're worried that why do you take on this period? This period is so unusual. This is the period of civil war with hyperinflation and so on. But maybe with all these unusual things that were going on that allow you to look at these effects separately. Now, unlike most paper on price convergence and market integration, they usually test one or two particular items such as commodity prices or exchange rates, which is something that I did with Zhao Liuyan, which I think this paper cited as well. Maybe that was the reason I was invited to discuss the paper and so on. So in many ways, you're testing these things separately. This paper is actually looking at putting these two things together. So, and that was really a big step forward. Now, I think I'm saying these great things about this paper with a warning that will come later on. Because this is such a big step forward, it might be a good idea to really think about how do you lay out everything very, very clearly. But this also is tangled with other things, right? So one of the things is this is the period of civil war, a major warfare that was going on. This is both good or bad. Good in the sense it really allows you to look at how financial market works, right? With you have great variations that will come through. I mean, if you're a period of general peace, you just look at integration in general. The warfare is impacting places very differently. And in particular, the paper uses warfare as IV. That's also a very smart strategy. The other part, which again is good or bad in some sense, this is a period of hyperinflation and has different periods as well. Now, it's good in the sense, which I'll talk about later, that you worry about hyperinflation because the hyperinflation, if the magnitude was so high, basically will wash out everything. You just don't see anything going on. There's a general price level increase, right? And all the differences in the different regions don't really matter at all. But on the other hand, it was good in the sense it really allow you to see the price effects kicking in. So I think in some sense, thinking about it, I think reading papers, thinking about this paper could be potentially extremely interesting. And as also they also show these, these microfilm studies and so on that, well, I don't mean to be showing off my people in my generation or people even in earlier than my generation, these microfilms are very common. That's what you work with all the time. Now this is very rare these days, but I do commend the author in this case going through these archives and digging out these things. And this is really very serious, data collection. And Zhihao mentioned 19 graduate students. My goodness. Anyway, we do need to generate jobs for the graduate students too. So I think this is really potentially very good. So let me go through again. I should emphasize I'm really phrasing everything in terms of comments and questions. Okay. So it's really a wonderful test case if it is done well. I think it's done quite well, but I think there are really a lot of things that could be done. Some of it could be done quite easily to improve the paper because the potential rewards are very large, but also be aware about the pitfalls as well. What I like to see is in a paper, in the beginning part of it, is to really lay out a hypothesis much more clearly, step by step. And most people are used to testing price convergence or one kind of convergence, and you are really putting them together. I mean, to some degree, you are testing price convergence, but with the exchange rate also thrown in there. And I think it would be really good to lay out these things much more carefully. One thing that really puzzled me for a long time, I mean, I think you sort of alluded to in the paper as well. I mean, these two effects are probably the same, right, to some degree. If a market is fully functioning, the exchange rates and the price effect, they should be, the price should be reflecting what the exchange rates should be. So I think, I mean, you have a lot of data on the warfare, and you lay out the maps, everything, and you have very nice maps on the financial hubs. That's really, really very good. But I think the information on exchange rates, on the price levels, except you show how the methods, you construct them, you do not have a lot of descriptive statistics. It would be really, really good to have a lot of graphs and figures showing that, so that people could really sort out the interactive effects and the independent effects. And so, so these are the major, the things that I would like to see, that if they are done very well, and this paper could potentially be very good. Now, the thing that really puzzled me, I think I get a little bit better picture after the presentation, but I'm still not sure. And this may be something you can ask me. So I did this paper with Liu, and for a long time, I've been puzzled by Chinese currency system. And you mentioned domestic exchange rates. We all know that. So there's something called 内汇市场. And I do not know what it is. I saw it after 1935, 1936 currency reform, everything was unified under 法币. And suddenly this domestic exchange rates were popping up. So, and there's no real examples of it. And the example you show, it seems to be showing the shipping costs. So it was unclear to me if there is a real exchange rates. As you know, in the certainly before 1935, Shanghai has its own particular exchange rates. Tianjin has its own exchange rates. There is a set of exchange rates, as the paper we did is called Yangli, right? And these are the price of liquidity to a certain degree. So even without exchange rates effect, the price of liquidity still exists. So if you don't have exchange rates, different places would have different demand for money, for cash, and they would generate different price levels. And some of these price level will be region specific. They are not absorbed in general price level. And you are testing at how the financial market clearing is impacting the specific regional price differentials. So one thing I want to be, I mean, this would be a very easy technical question. Was there a real exchange rates, or what you really mean by domestic exchange rate is these region specific price differentials? Okay, so this is what I mean by, are they not part of the same process? And then you were really testing using warfare's impact on. Now, one thing that's really quite interesting, you were thinking that, well, the warfare is going to impact both trade and financial clearing, right? And you are really looking at warfare after your presentation. I find it much clearer. You're really looking at the impact of warfare on financial clearing and using that to look at how they affect the trade. Now, normally you will think trading center and financial hub, they're both the same. So I don't see there should be a separate effects. And the other thing that was also very important, this is something your paper didn't mention, is one would think the warfare will impact trading routes and activities much more than financial clearing, right? You can do financial clearing, and shipping money is much cheaper than shipping rice. And so, but you are actually testing the reverse effect of that. So it's really, really important for you to sort it out. But I think this is an important point, because this is the point you're really trying to argue, that the financial hub and trading center do not necessarily overlap. And that's where the different effects are generated. And that the other point that I already mentioned, this is period of hyperinflation. I really like to see the hyperinflation data. I have a feeling that the hyperinflation have different phases. Maybe in the phases, the hyperinflation was relatively mild. That's where you can see the effects. When the hyperinflation was so high, that all the effects will be probably washed out. So these are, again, I want to see more descriptive statistics. I'd like to see more figures and graphs, and to really give more examples. You give us some example cities, but really give us a real historical examples. This particular warfare happened in Ningbo. It didn't disrupt trade, but it disrupted financial clearing. Okay, and also again for organization issues and so on, I think you give people the impression you're testing a lot of hypotheses, but I think you're doing one. But it would be good to organize it much more clearly. So overall, I think it's really potentially a wonderful paper and wonderful data. There's so much you could do, and maybe a good suggestion: slow down, go do it step by step, because that will potentially be a very great paper. Okay, and again, congratulations on really a very excellent piece of work the potential that will still need to be teased out. That's all. I'm actually discussing more than 5 minutes. So should I stop sharing and get people?
I guess maybe
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Ma, for these great comments. So I
would
really encourage
Professor.
everyone in the audience to ask any question they may have to Zhihao on the study in the Q&A box, and I will put them to you. And in the meantime, Zhihao, you have some minutes to answer Professor Ma comments and questions.
Okay, so should I answer Professor Ma's questions first? Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Meanwhile, let's hope the audience will also come up with more questions as well. I think it's really
okay.
Yeah, but go ahead, answer the questions. Hopefully, I'm trying to encourage the people who are around to type questions in between. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sure. I think let me share my slides again. So actually, when I present the paper, I try to keep it short. So I put a few materials in appendix. So this is the statistical summaries for commodity price and domestic exchange rate. Also, as mentioned by Professor, I separate the period into two parts. The first part is before the currency reform. Here is before the currency reform. This is post currency reform. So it shows that actually the price dispersions becomes larger after the gold yuan, the Jin Yuan Quan, gold yuan currency reform took place. So that means the currency reform was just a filler. And the big picture for the hyperinflation is like this. So so be careful here is that the price index here is in log scales. So that means this is actually an exponential of exponential pattern. So that means the hyperinflation is accelerating, especially when the currency reform has already took place. So to answer Professor's question about how to control the effect of hyperinflation, that is a very good question and a very good point in my research. Actually, a lot of audience already mentioned this. To be honest, I cannot fix this issue entirely, but I do something to make sure that maybe I can partially fix these issues. So I control the currency reform, because we know that before the currency reform and after currency reform, the hyperinflation is different. So I control the currency reform to see whether it will shows different patterns on the effect of domestic exchange rate on price convergence. And it shows that the currency reform does not play an important role. So they may provide a partial solution to the question whether the hyperinflation will play an important role. But I need to admit that this is not a perfect answer. And yeah, I think this is two answers to Professor's questions about the statistics and the hyperinflation. And I'm also open to other questions from the other audience. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I will use my privilege as moderator to ask one question, and I would like if you could say us a bit more about the last point you mentioned about going forward with the paper to include the welfare analysis of price dispersion. And I wanted to ask you how do you intend to do that, and what the contribution is going to be for the paper, which is already quite dense.
Okay, you mean for the last slides, right? The welfare, yeah. So I tried to refer to some some theoretical model which will not have a very high demand for the data. Since during the Civil War period, the data I only have the data of some commodities and domestic exchange rate and some battle informations. But in order to conduct the welfare analysis, usually we need the quantity data. However, I do not have the quantity data for domestic exchange transaction and trade flows. So that is quite difficult. But I can turn to some macroeconomic model which only focus on the inflation or the variance of inflation across times, so which may reduce the demand for data. But that is just a big picture for the future plan. Yeah.
Thank you. So I don't see any question queuing so far. So maybe Professor Ma, do you have any follow-up comments on Zhihao?
Yeah, I can talk a bit more because I really quite like the paper.
Have...
Meanwhile, I really like other people to ask questions. So if
yeah,
anybody...
we have our first question. Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So the question is from Zhihao, asking if the exchange rate premium is used here or it was just remittance fee.
Thank you for your questions, Professor Zhao. So actually, your paper collaborated with Professor Ma inspired me a lot for my research. So actually, here, to be honest, the description of the domestic exchange rate at that time, it was not very clear according to the, during the Civil War period, it was not very clear according to the literature. I got this term because when I collect the data from the ICAPs, the central bank report shows that there's the Chinese terms and English terms, and it shows that is called domestic exchange rate 内汇率. So I presume that is not exactly remittance fee. I think that is a broad terms, maybe more than the core concept of remittance fee. But as Professor Ma already mentioned, that I need to look into more materials about this. So what it was exactly the exchange rate measured. Yeah, but thank you for your questions.
Okay, so maybe if I can do a follow-up on that, also because this is a doctoral seminar and so there are a lot of graduate students interested in your methodology. I wanted to ask you if you could say a bit more about your archival strategy, because you did this very great data collection. And so I wanted to ask you if you could say a little bit more on that, and how did you find the data, and how did you choose to make to build your sample, etc. So could you say a few words on this?
So how can you say something about your data collection strategy?
Yeah, so here, as I mentioned, I really indebted to the help of the UCLA undergrad students. So when you say about the data collection strategy, actually, let me say something about how I organize the data collection and digitalization. So I just sent out the announcement hiring a research assistant for my Chinese Civil War project. And since many students at UCLA are very interested in this topic, so they attend my presentation. A presentation of a brief idea of the Civil War. And I show my idea and show what is the prospects for the research. And I ask whether they are still interested in my research. So most of them stayed. And this strategy here is that I set up a Google Docs, a Google Sheets for them to sign up the RA schedule for them, so that each student will not spend too much time since they have a lot of work, schoolwork, so they can coordinate with each other for digitalization. But for data collection part, actually the data was mainly collected by myself. So the students will mainly focus on the GIS mapping and digitalization and other works. Since when I went to the National Library in China, I collected data with the microfilm projectors, but students at the UCLA, they cannot get access to the source there. So that's why I get the data there. I collected the original archives, and then I assigned and distributed the archives and sheets to all of them, and they can coordinate the work. Yeah. Do I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thanks. So maybe there are not more questions. I will turn to Professor Matt if you want to continue the dialogue on the paper.
Yeah, can I have some? Go ahead, Zhu.
Yeah, yes, thank you both to Zhihao and Debing for the presentation and the discussion. Sorry that I'm in a location that is that makes it kind of difficult for me to have reliable internet connection as I'm in quarantine here in Shanghai. But for Zhihao,
you're very lucky.
I have a question for you regarding your choice of the period of study. Because as you mentioned, the Civil War was going on between 1945 and 1949. So usually when we want to study price convergence or market integration, whether it's financial market or trade market, we want to have a clean environment as possible, so that we can just focus on the factors we are interested in and try to minimize the impact of other unrelated, unidentified noises and drivers. I mean, it seems to me that the 1945-49 period offers you a lot of unidentified factors and variables that are beyond our ability to identify. So would this period make it harder to draw conclusions on the relation between, let's say, transaction costs, trading costs, or shipment costs and market integration? Because war is not really a continuous variable in the usual sense. For example, when we talk about bid-ask spread costs and other trading costs, they are much easier to calculate, and they are continuous. But when we talk about a war, I can easily say that in some contexts, having a war going on may actually make certain types of transactions or interregional transfers easier to do than under normal circumstances, because in those days, military ships in the Yangtze River and also along the coastal line may be running faster. I don't know, because they had to carry a lot of military supplies, but because the core, paper money and even metal money would not take too much space, and also they would usually not be so heavy. So with a lot of military ships moving around, you might have more opportunities to transport things from one place to another than you normally have. Anyway, so just maybe more on the motivation side, on the choice of this particular period for this research.
Okay, thank you for comments and Professor Chen. Let me say something about your related to your questions and comments, and then I will turn to John's question. So the issue here is that why I choose this period is that to do the research topic related to Chinese economic history is generally very difficult due to the data availability. Actually, this is data driven for my research. So the reason why I can get many data on the commodity price, that is exactly because it is during the hyperinflation period. Since the background here is that the statistic department of the central bank and the nationalist government needs to show to the senior officials and to the public what was the hyperinflation situation goes on during that time. So they closely monitor the economy and the commodity price at that time. But however, during the regular times, for example, as Professor Ma mentioned before, 1935 and 1936, the data is very difficult to get due to two reasons. First, at that time, maybe the investigation statistics department for collecting data was not well established, or because at that time there's not conventions for collecting data. So to be honest, the research was partially data driven. So that's why it was not. I chose the time period for the research topic the other way. Okay. So let me turn to John's question about the data source. I think I move too quickly for my slides. Let me show you again. So here, this is the data I have. So the two main sources for the data one is the newspaper and another is internal periodical. Okay. And this one actually is the internal report that is published by the Central Bank of Republic of China. However, all the newspapers and periodical are stored in a microfilm at that time. So that means somebody else has already took pictures of all the magazines and journals during the Republic of China period, and then they are stored very well and stored in the National Library of China. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think another question from Wei Pen. Yeah, I think there's multiple questions. I'm not sure whether I can answer all of them. Let me see. Yeah, you have. I think you're a good expert for this topic. So Shenghui, yeah, so Shanghai Domestic Exchange worked as the medium for most of the domestic exchanges. So that's why when I collect the data, most of the data actually, when I say citywide, city pairwise domestic exchange, the city pairwise mostly consists of the city connecting to Shanghai. But actually, I can also say the domestic exchange between two other cities, not just connecting to Shanghai. But I think I still need to look into your the question you raised up, whether Shenghui will play an intermediary as other domestic exchange, for example, Hanhui or Jinhui. But I think that's a very good point. Yeah. And why did you choose the period of 1911, 1937? I think I've already answered the question based on Professor Chen's comments, because at that time, for other times, the commodity price was very difficult to collect it. But during hyperinflation time, the government needs to monitor the commodity price on daily basis, because the hyperinflation rate is very high. So you need to closely monitor the situation. But definitely, I will look into other periods if data is available. Thank you.
Can I add something to this? I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, no, this is very good. I began to understand what part of my confusion is, and I think this could be something very useful if you sort it out in this paper. I mean, your answer to, first of all, for example, when you show the hyperinflation data, which you don't have in the paper, but you showed it in the slides, and those are the things that actually would be very useful to you show it in the paper for two reasons. One is you really want to demonstrate the hyperinflation does not wash out all the effects you've been talking about. That itself is actually extremely interesting and shows the significance of your research, right? The other things, the hyperinflation have different phases. You might be thinking about testing your hypothesis by dividing into different phases to really show if hyperinflation matters, okay? So that's one thing that I was thinking about. Now, then I realized what the problem is when I was reading your paper. So there are two things that's really quite important. I think Zhao Ruiyan raised that question. I'm beginning to suspect where you mean the domestic exchange rates is actually remittance fee. When I say currency reform, we were thinking of 1936. Before 1936, there's really exchange rates, literally like foreign countries. After 1936, there's basically one currency. So what you are really looking at is region price differentials. I think it will be very important to, this is why I think Wei Peng's question also came in. I think some way all these things may have changed after 1936. So this is very good, but as an economic historian, it will be really good for you to dig into the historical period. I mean, it's a very confusing period. That's one thing. It might be good for you to really distinguish these two periods. They are probably not different exchange rates as we imagined. They're just different price levels. You mentioned the currency reform is that's a Jingyuan Quan, right? And that was also a very important reform, which a lot of people wrote about. I do not know much about it. It's really, really important for you to describe in the paper what that reform is. I was thinking 1935, 36 reform. The Jingyuan Quan reform is a different type of reform. So it would be really good to
Yes. Yeah.
These are not difficult things to do, but I think these, once historical details factor in, the paper will come out much more significant in many ways, much more significant than we think, than probably you think. So anyway, sorry.
Thank you. Let me say something more about the definition of domestic exchange rates. So I think I'm quite sure that is not remittance fee, because when I check the data, there's discount. There's for some domestic exchange transactions, there's discount. So remittance fee, it must be positive.
Right.
But here, when I check domestic exchange, there's a discount. Then it implies that is not exactly remittance fee. But yes, to clarify the questions you Professor Ma and Professor Zhao raised, that is very important for my research. I definitely I need to look into the exact description and the historical description about these terms. Yeah, thank you.
So Melis, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, great. I think we've reached the hour, so I want to really thank you very much, Zhihao, for this very, very interesting talk, and thank you, Professor Ma, for all your comments and your careful reading of the paper. Thanks a lot to all the team here in Hong Kong for this great collaboration. Before giving them the floor, I would just want to say a few words about the Young Scholar initiatives. So this is a network of young scholars all around the world. So feel free to check out our website. I put the link in the chat, and any graduate student from anywhere could join and start his own initiative there. And so maybe now, Professor Ma, Professor Chen, you can say a few words about closing remarks.
I don't have anything to say except to transmit what Beth, who's running everything, saying that please, for those of you who are attending the first time, please do sign up for the future mailing. I'm done. Ziwu, do you want to say anything?
Just a couple of words. Of course, as many of you know, we started this quantitative history webinar series with the only purpose of promoting the use of quantitative methods in history-related research. So this time is a new experiment with the YSI Economic History Graduate Webinar to have this joint event. So I hope that in the future we can do more such joint projects. Okay, so thank you, Melis, and thank you, Zhihao and Debin for organizing and doing the presentation and discussion for this particular episode. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to Beth and his team to help organizing this.
Thank you, Melis.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Bye.